the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Jasper Nathaniel, writer of the Infinite Jaz newsletter in Substack, with a piece on the archaeological warfare in the West Bank. Also on the program today, Republicans can't come up with language for a continuing resolution, now supposedly voting on it on Thursday. AOC blocked at committee level for the House Oversight Chair. The full caucus vote is happening right now. Meanwhile, Senate advances the National Defense Authorization Act, authorizing $900 billion in defense spending, but worried about trans care for children. Russia's chemical weapons chief killed by a Ukrainian bomb in Moscow. TikTok headed to the Supreme Court to fight their ban. Trump planning to actively undermine electric cars rollout. RFK Jr. meets with senators. No word on whether they'll be wearing masks when he does. Christopher Freeland, finance minister, quits Trudeau's cabinet. Trudeau, shaky ground in Canada. New report, median homeowner has 40 times the net worth of a median renter. And Josh Hawley pushes an expanded child tax credit, but it appears to basically lock out low-income families. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. It is sort of
Newsday Tuesday.
Sort of. It's the end of the year. I'm playing around with things, so we're loosey-goosey. Jasper's going to join us in a moment. I don't have in front of me the name of the publication where that piece is going to be, but we will talk to him about this. The use of essentially archaeological findings in an ideological battle, one which has special resonance now that Donald Trump is president, and promised Miriam Adelson to deliver the annexation of the West Bank for the Israelis. So we will be talking to Jasper about that.
It'll be in Drift magazine, where it'll be published.
And in the meantime, we have this vote right now in the Democratic caucus to see, among others, who will be the chair of the Oversight Committee. Either AOC or
Pelosi's pick.
Or Pelosi's pick.
New Democrat.
Jerry Connolly, at a sprite 74 years old with esophageal cancer. So,
and for people that don't know, like, oversight in terms of House committees is probably the most visible. Like, this is the kind of thing where we need a talented communicator who can come out and go after the Republicans. She would just be ranking member, but if the Democrats take back the House in 26, it's she would be a really effective partisan. And once again,
but you think that something like energy and charisma and effective communication with constituents and appealing to the same sort of outsider
we have the
energy
result.
that Donald Trump did, as evidenced by the way that her district voted, you think that has value. And you don't think, obviously, or you do somehow think that someone who is battling esophageal cancer at age 74 may not be able to have the continuity in that role, or frankly, with all due respect, fighting cancer like that is an exhausting thing. The energy because of to effectively serve in that way. That's your problem.
We have the result.
Yeah.
131 to 84. Connolly wins.
Oh, there you go.
To the co-sponsor of Pago in 2010.
You know what's so fun? What's so fun is that Nancy Pelosi is not the Speaker of the House anymore. She's Speaker Emerita. And now we have a woman who is 84 years old, leaving Congress soon, not in leadership anymore, calling the shots behind the scenes as shadow leader, undercutting Hakeem Jeffries. And I'm sure he's in favor of a lot of this. But still, it's bad optics for leadership to have her operating in this way. 84-year-old Pelosi pushing a 74-year-old man with cancer to undercut the top, probably most popular young politician in this country right now among anybody under 40 with their base. After we were in this situation with Donald Trump getting reelected because an 81-year-old Joe Biden refused to step aside and have a primary process for a new, fresh face of the party that undercut the prospects of having that happen, clung onto power and gave us another Trump term. Prior to that, Ruth Bader Ginsburg in her 80s refused to retire under Obama. In 2014 would have been the opportune time to do so. She was, I think, 80 or 81 at that point, to get a new nominee. Then she died while Trump was in office. He immediately appointed Amy Coney Barrett. And 87-year-old Dianne Feinstein at the time was the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee. She had a grand old time in those hearings and did absolutely no pushback on this nominee. And then that cemented a supermajority, essentially, in the Supreme Court of far-right justices. This gerontocratic leadership is literally killing us. It is killing us. It is creating a situation in which we're back with Donald Trump for another 4 years. And then all of the structural things that I just mentioned. This party, what does it stand for other than deferring to seniority? Truly.
Donors.
This was an enormous opportunity to put her at the forefront and give her actual power within the caucus. I can't believe this.
I mean, when you look at I
can't believe this.
The willingness of the Republican Party to use the energy that Marjorie Taylor Greene presents for them as much of a complete crap show as she is. And the Democratic Party has gone out of its way at every step to kneecap AOC. And at one point she made the determination, it seems to me, that she was going to try and play the inside game. And because the outside game, frankly, wasn't working either. I mean, we saw what happened when there was there was any type of strategic or tactical decision that she made. There was just outcry from the left. She was demonized by the right. Justice Democrats wasn't her organization, but it certainly was the organization in which, we were going to be able to grow the squad or squad adjacent Democrats the left or nominal progressive movement did very little in terms of like supporting that and growing that. 2 squad members were taken out by the Democrats, or I should say the DMFI. I mean, it was really Republican money, but the Democrats refused to structure their primaries in any way that would inhibit the ability of other Democrats from getting that money. I mean, so there's very little, it seems to me. I mean, from her perspective, she can be a backbencher and do nothing for years in the House without any type of power base, because, I mean, she can be very popular. She can raise a lot of money, but it doesn't seem to matter. At least in terms of like getting power within the Democratic caucus, passing legislation. There's only so much the bully pulpit is worth anything. I mean, at one point,
Bernie Sanders proved that to a degree.
Well, I mean, Bernie Sanders was not as high profile as she was, but he languished in the House for literally, I think it was 2 decades, and I think she made a strategic decision to do something different, to try and work within the context of the institution to amass some power. And it appears that it hasn't worked. Well, it certainly hasn't worked up to this point. And it's unclear, I don't know.
I mean, the difference between her and Marjorie Taylor Greene is Marjorie Taylor Greene inherited a contracting company and was like basically a millionaire. AOC's politics challenged the donor base. So there's a complete lack of symmetry here.
Oh, without a doubt. Yes. I mean, but that's the case with all the Republican, situations for the most part. There is a consistent, the incentive structure is completely lined up.
And how rich is Pelosi right now?
Yeah.
I mean, what else is there to say? I mean,
I don't want to wish ill on anybody, but, esophageal cancer is very difficult, and maybe there'll be an opportunity for AOC sooner than later, but who knows?
But this is a real missed opportunity, and I know it's the donor base, and then that's what it is, and this kind of ossified leadership, and Pelosi still hating her for probably taking out her guy, Joe Crowley, who was her number 3, or occupying her office during the Green New Deal protests, which I was there for. It was a very exciting time. She's now played ball, and she's not getting rewarded because of exactly what Matt just said, because she is a challenge to that donor base. And so I don't understand how they can expect, when there's all this conversation about losing maybe Gen Z and younger people, and there's no enthusiasm about the Democratic Party. A lot of those kids just remember Trump. Then they remember Biden, this old guy who couldn't communicate. There's one energetic figure who, by the way, lost a lot less and across the board in New York as a Democrat, and there were many people that voted for her and Donald Trump. Voted for Trump.
But wait.
Majority Latino. No.
Cue up number 8. Are you telling me this guy's not charismatic?
But let me just finish my point. It was a majority Latino district. Also, she has the ear of young people and Latino voters, who are the 2 groups that Democrats lost in this election.
All right.
That's my concern, is that they recognize her as outside of the party. That's why she was benefited with that split vote. And if you want a bright lining, is that she's not going to be perceived as on the party, because they're stamping dirt in her face every chance they get.
With all due respect to voters in general, they don't have a sense of where she sits on one of these committees.
I think inside or outside they do.
I think what it is, any more than people like Donald Trump is not an outsider. I mean, it's an aesthetic. It's an aesthetic. And
but she'd be visible on oversight.
She's visible.
She had that aesthetic and does have it.
She has that aesthetic. And being chair of the House Oversight Committee wouldn't, I think, inhibit that at all, frankly. But here is this is the guy who's going to be one of the big faces of the Democratic Party in opposition. And tell me that this isn't going to resonate.
I'm so inspired right now.
How are you feeling going into the vote?
Good.
Good? Yeah?
Sir, what's your time? Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Oh.
He was president 4 times.
Oh.
Right.
Are you
So what's your case for why you'll be...
That's what this meeting's about.
Do you have the vote locked in, sir?
I'm not. I never count my chickens till they're hatched.
Congressman, if you lose the steering vote, will you contest it in
I don't
caucus?
intend to lose.
There you go.
Well, he didn't lose.
Good stuff.
And Dave Weigel pointed out that invoking of FDR running for a fourth term is pretty bad because he was also sickly and he died a few months into his fourth term.
Chop that up and put it on TikTok. They're going to love Connolly.
It also is pretty ironic that his main booster, Nancy Pelosi, literally had to get her hip replaced in Luxembourg on a Codell trip to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge. That's what she was doing while kind of pulling the strings to get the 74-year-old man with esophageal cancer over the finish line.
Says it all.
A couple of words from our sponsors today. I don't have the time to cook that often. Occasionally I do, but I still want to give my kid a wholesome meal. He doesn't have to know that it's taking me essentially like 2 minutes to make. Days are shorter these days. Nighttime comes quicker, certainly around this time of year. Factor has been a staple at my house now for almost a year. Factor is America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service. They have 35 different delicious meals every week and over 60 additional convenience options you can add to your box, like keto cookies or pressed juices, smoothies I go deep into. Want to thank Factor for supporting the Majority Report. Factor lets you do you. Choose from 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well balanced. All ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Head to factormeals.com/50majority. That's factormeals.com/50majority and use the code 50majority, that's 50 majority, to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. All Factor's meals are chef prepared and dietitian approved. You're going to love how Factor's meals taste, but how they support your goals if you're trying to eat well. They got stuff like home-style chicken and gravy. Potato pork chops. They have vegan options like sweet potato and chickpea curry. They got globally inspired flavors like Peruvian shrimp and red pepper cauliflower grits. The food's great. My son loves it. I completely understand the whole thing with, what do you call it? Microwaves now. Yeah. I never really understood it. I was like, well, you can melt cheese in there. I just didn't, I never had, I just never, I don't think we had a microwave when I was a kid and I just never got into it. But I could stick the, like a chicken Florentine in the microwave in 2 minutes. It's ready.
That's nice.
Weekly menus offer ways to treat yourself to a restaurant-like meal. Gourmet plus dishes that feature premium proteins and seasonal sides like broccolini, leeks, asparagus. How does truffle butter filet mignon or garlic herb roasted barramundi sound? Delicious, right? Use your time more efficiently, particularly in these dark months. Very important. Head to factormeals.com/50majority and use the code 50majority. Get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code 50majority at factormeals.com/50majority to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping while your subscription is active. We'll put the link in the podcast and YouTube description. I've got my annual physical coming up. I know one thing that I feel confident about. I mean, I'm in pretty good health, I think. But one thing is that unlike in the past, when I go in there and I get my blood test and the doctor comes back, he's not going to say to me, you are low on your vitamin D. Why? Because I take Essential for Men. It's a multivitamin. based solely on science, designed to help fill common nutrient gaps in the diet with 10 key nutrients. It's by Ritual. Like I say, for a long time, a doctor would be like, you got to take a multivitamin because you're low on vitamin D and it's good for you. Okay, I buy one, I take it, and then I forget to take it again when it runs out. That was basically me for about 15 years or something. I don't know. But the beauty of Ritual is two things. One, not only do they send it to you when you run out every month. Two, you could take it when you remember to take it. You don't have to wait until you get a full stomach because it is very easy on your stomach. Essential for Men contains 10 key nutrients in 2 delayed release capsules per day, designed to dissolve later in the small intestine, which is an optimal place apparently to absorb nutrients. And like I say, also it's gentle on an empty stomach. Ritual works with world-class certification bodies to validate their products. Ritual vitamins are vegan. They are non-GMO. They are gluten and major allergen-free. They are made traceable. In other words, you can see where the ingredients come from. That's important. Ritual uses scientific tools to lower carbon packaging, prioritize sustainably sourced ingredients, and set ambitious climate goals because Ritual is a B Corp, fully female-founded B Corp, meaning they hold themselves accountable to not just their company's financial health, but the health of people and our planet. Essential for Men is a quality multivitamin from a company you can actually trust. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/majority. Start Ritual or add Essential for Men to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/majority. 25% off. Again, that will be in the podcast and YouTube description. And lastly, on the cruise I took the other night or the other week, I would drink a little bit at dinner. And then we would go to like they call it the crow's nest and, mix with, some of the other nation cruise goers. And so I would have a drink or two. And how did I manage the next morning to get up and be able to do the panels I needed to do? Everybody knows in this office. I was smart enough to bring like 4 bottles of Z-Biotics. What is Z-Biotics? It's a pre-alcohol probiotic drink. It's the first genetically engineered probiotic, invented by PhD scientists to help you feel better the morning after you drink. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's that toxic byproduct and not dehydration that's to blame for your rough next day. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme and it breaks this byproduct down. All you got to do is make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly. You're going to feel your best tomorrow. It's every time we ever did a show in here for the debates or anything like that, that was like the first drink of the night. I brought it. I was so proud of myself. I can't even believe it that I brought it. Because that's the hardest part about it is just remembering.
Right.
But once you do, next day, you just feel normal and good. I mean, as good as as a baseline.
Right.
I had heard about this stuff and always wondered if it worked, and it does. Stay in the loop. Go to zbiotics.com/majority. Use majority at checkout. You can also sign up for a subscription using our code so you can stay prepared no matter the time or the occasion. Z-Biotics backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they're going to refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, head to zbiotics.com/majority. Use the code majority at checkout. You get 15% off. Thank you, Z-Biotic, for sponsoring this episode and for, allowing me to get up the next morning.
Very nice.
Meanwhile, RFK Jr. is on the Hill today, making his pitch to senators. He's a very well-spoken guy, and he comes off as knowing what he's talking about. I think for some people, sometimes he can sound a little bit off his rocker.
Well, it sounds reasonable in a vacuum when you say, we haven't tested for this effect of the vaccine. We've got to stop things and figure out what's going on until you start to think about the implications of what that would mean.
So in anticipation of RFK Jr. going around and with the story out that one of his top advisors was a lawyer seeking the FDA to pull the polio vaccine. Here is Donald Trump giving a press conference yesterday in Palm Beach, Florida, basically trying to run cover for Kennedy, knowing that this is going to be a big issue with people on the Hill.
Thanks, President Trump. What about the polio vaccine?
Well, I'm a big believer in it, and I think everything should be looked at, but I'm a big believer in the polio vaccine, the Salk vaccine.
Do you think schools should mandate vaccines? Do you think schools should mandate vaccines?
I don't like mandates. I'm not a big mandate person. So, I was against mandates. Mostly Democrat governors did the mandates, and they did a very poor thing. It was, in retrospect, they made a big mistake having to do with the education of children. They lost like a year or 2 years of their lives. The mandate was a bad thing. I was against the mandate.
So is that something you'd want to?
So first off, I love how he's got to say Salk, like I know who made it.
I am surprised he actually had that factoid.
He was alive, basically.
No, I remember he was.
Right. It's like the same reason that some of Biden's good domestic things could have just been because he preceded neoliberalism and remembered it.
Just to be clear, not just Democratic governors, but every state in the nation, plus D.C., and I don't know, I would imagine Puerto Rico, although I'm not sure about that, mandate polio vaccine among I think 6 others.
Yeah, I'm from North Dakota. I got all those vaccines.
He's referring to the COVID mandates he doesn't know what he's talking about.
What are you talking about?
You think that Donald Trump, the attentive parent that he is, was all across Don Jr. and Eric and Ivanka's vaccinations?
Bring the kids in when they got their vaccine. I mean, the point is, and we walked through this yesterday in discussing that anti-vax guy, Jimmy Dore's perspective on what was problematic with the polio vaccine. You need to have, for polio to be eradicated, and it has largely, at least in this country, and really relatively speaking around the world, been eradicated. It crops back up, without a doubt. There's still one wild type of polio that circulates, and there are still weakened strains of polio that circulate as a function of the oral vaccine. But that circulates there, if it hits somebody who's been vaccinated, actually builds their immunity. In a very rare case, you can actually contract polio to it, but only if you are unvaccinated. And the more unvaccinated, the higher chances of different polio strains mutating and becoming in some way resistant. It's like, you got to put out the fire, essentially. You cannot just sort of put out half the fire because there's too much tinder around and other things are going to burn. So he doesn't either understand what the implications are of vaccinations, what's the point, or he's just trying to be obtuse. But the fact of the matter is, if you appoint this guy as head of Health and Human Services, every vaccine is on the table to be unmandated. And if you unmandate things, and let's be clear, the federal government doesn't mandate it. The CDC just recommends it. And every state in the country mandates it because they know it's a problem. They don't want to be the state that is dealing with this outbreak. But here's RFK Jr. who claims he's never said that vaccines aren't effective or are unsafe. But listen to where he goes with this.
This was last year.
Last year.
On with Lex Friedman.
You've talked about that the media slanders you by calling you an anti-vaxxer. And you've said that you're not anti-vaccine, you're pro-safe vaccine. Difficult question. Can you name any vaccines that you think are good?
I think some of the live virus vaccines are probably averting more problems than they're causing.
Pause it for a second. Now that's important because the oral polio vaccine is a live virus vaccine, and I would agree with his assessment. They are solving more problems than they cause, and I would say it's not 50. It's not 55-45. It's not 60-40. They are solving 97 or 95 or 98% of the problems, and they're causing 2% of the problems. And by 98, 97, what I'm saying is they're wiping out polio for the most part, but can cause polio in like a person like in Rockland County 2 years ago who was unvaccinated, presumably as part of a fundamentalist religious group that doesn't believe in vaccinations and ended up sadly paralyzed. But continue.
Averting more problems than they're causing. There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective.
Those are big words. What about the polio? Words. Can we talk about the?
Well, here's the problem.
Yes.
Here's the problem. The polio vaccine contained
Now listen. There is no vaccine that is safe and effective.
That's the quote.
That's insane.
Lunatic.
That's insane. First of all, there's no medicine or medical treatment that is 100% safe, right? Like, when you say something is safe, you are saying on balance it's safe. And he's saying on balance they're not safe. And now he's going to go lie about the polio vaccine where there were batches in the 50s and 60s that had been contaminated with a virus called N40 and SV40, sorry. And he's going to claim that there is a causal connection between the contamination within these vaccines and people developing cancer. Again, it was taken out in like
1963.
Okay, so here he is.
Yes.
Here's the problem. The polio vaccine contained a virus called simian virus 40, SV40. It's one of the most carcinogenic materials that is known to man. In fact, it's used now by scientists around the world to induce tumors in rats and guinea pigs in labs. But it was in that vaccine. 98 million people who got that vaccine in my generation got it. And now you've had this explosion of soft tissue cancers in our generation that kill many, 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 many more people than polio ever did. So if you say to me that
now, first off, the implication that there's this new wave of cancer, that's true. There's more cancer today than there was 70 years ago, but people, at least if you were in the upper half of the income distribution, are living on average 15 years longer. And one of the things that happens when you get older is you get sicker. And so the alternative could have also been like, maybe if they had just died of polio earlier, they wouldn't have ended up with cancer.
And correlation also does not equal causation. There's a good thing that says like a lot of people that had these cancers had the SV40 and didn't, and there might be other reasons that cause
SV40 is present in people who have cancer and have not received that particular polio vaccination.
But what fascinates me about this is there's one of the common things cited by anti-vaxxers on this is mesothelioma and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We know other causes for that that might have caused like asbestos, right? Industry stuff, or with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, insecticides.
He has worked on those cases.
Right.
And then the thesis, we've talked about this with RFK before, about autism and vaccines being linked to thimerosal. Thimerosal was taken out in 2001. and it showed no real effect on autism rates.
None.
So the point here is like they are trying to fit a square peg into a round hole because he and other anti-vaxxers are exploiting an anxiety that people have about their medicine. And as you were saying earlier, no treatment is 100% safe. But what he is speaking to is that fear that it's going to go wrong for folks, in part because our health system is so exploitative, it's so expensive, it's so ineffective for such a majority of this country that people are primed to feel like they can turn to somebody who's going to provide them with an alternative.
Or they're just the idea. They're primed to believe that there would be something nefarious like this for profits, which, you know, there are instances where that's the case. But polio is pretty settled.
Yeah. And I'll say, like, this is Benjamin Franklin, when he was in his late teens, early 20s, published anti-vax stuff, and later had to regret it because he lost a kid to smallpox. So we can play a little bit more.
We have a few more.
All right, continue.
Many, many more people than polio ever did. So if you say to me that the polio vaccine was effective against polio, I'm going to say yes. And if you say to me, did it kill more people, did it cause more deaths than avert, I would say, I don't know, because we don't have the data on that.
Oh, well, you know what else we don't have the data on? We don't have the data on whether or not aliens came down and actually infected these people with cancer. We don't have data on it. So I don't know. It's an open question.
Maybe it's Bigfoot.
And that's the thing is like the frickin' just honestly the arrogance of just like all of these scientists have go to school for years, and doctors and experts, and there's peer review and there's blind testing and there's placebo and all of this stuff. This like anti-science faux intellectualism that this podcast ecosystem, Joe Rogan or whatever, or even this guy Friedman, who did ask a good question here though, like they make these charlatans seem like they have all the answers when they know nothing.
Sophists.
The scientific community has made major advancements, specifically in the field of public health. And the polio vaccine is one of the greatest accomplishments of the past 150 years. We have all but eradicated paralytic polio. And but a son of a famous politician gets to go on a podcast and spout off without having like actual research experience in this field and say whatever he wants, and then he gets the nomination for Health and Human Services Secretary. So the point is just like, if Donald Trump says he's in favor of the polio vaccine, but he's still appointing a guy to Health and Human Services who says that the polio vaccine caused more harm than it helped.
That's insane.
Honestly,
that's just insane. And it's sort of amazing it didn't get more attention because I know we played clips of this, but people didn't let it roll, where he's basically saying, on balance, the polio vaccine hurt and killed more people, according to him, than it helped. That's insane. 35,000 kids annually in the 40s being paralyzed in a country that's was a third the size of us.
Think of what that does in the minds of all the people that take that at face value. How that orientates you towards the world.
And I'll tell you what's also scary is like the whole COVID thing, where you had, probably hundreds of thousands of people who died who didn't have to die because they were, the vaccine wasn't available to them or they weren't inclined to get it. That's the dry run. We start seeing, polio and measles and of course, let's also be clear. I can tell you right now, if I have to guess, what is going to be the biggest cohort of children who end up getting these diseases? They are not going to be, I can tell you in what, like, you show me an income distribution in this country and you show me a racial distribution in this country, and I can tell you which cohort is going to have the highest incidences of things like hepatitis or polio or,
we saw it with lead.
So that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. All right. We got to take a break. We come back. Jasper Nathaniel, writer of the Infinite Jaz newsletter on Substack, Most recent piece, In Ruins, Archaeological Warfare in the West Bank, published in the Drift magazine. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Pleasure to welcome back to the program Jasper Nathaniel, writer of the Infinite Jaz newsletter on Substack. Also a great follow on Instagram for those of us who are senior citizens. And his most recent piece, In Ruins, Archaeological Warfare in the West Bank. It's published in Drift magazine. It just came out yesterday. Is that right? Okay, great. We'll put a link to that. So, Jasper, let's just start with this. The West Bank, well, let's start with this question. What's Judea and Samaria? Because I keep hearing Bill Clinton and what's his face?
Mike
Huckabee talk about this. And I don't remember at least Bill Clinton using this parlance before.
Seeing Bill Clinton use it was that was just bizarre. Judea and Samaria, as you know, is basically the biblical name for the West Bank. And it refers to the two kingdoms of the ancient kingdom of Israel. So the northern kingdom, which was Samaria, and then Judea. For obvious sort of political reasons, the settlers will not say West Bank. They'll only say Judea and Samaria. Mike Huckabee will only say Judea and Samaria, apparently Bill Clinton, Netanyahu. So when you hear Judea and Samaria, you should just sort of automatically know, okay, this is a person referring to the West Bank in the language of the settlers who believe it is theirs to take. So,
Just one historical question so I can place this. Was it named Judea and Samaria when the Canaanites controlled that area?
Even before that, God named it Judea and Samaria, actually. So
well, but I mean, honestly, though, I mean that's the point. Like, when was relatively are we talking post Canaanites?
Yes.
Post Assyrians too, right?
Yeah. So the Canaanites,
post the Babylonians.
Yeah, it's somewhere around
post the Persians. The Persians, right? From folks from Iran.
I forget exactly when the Persians were there, but the gist is correct that, and it's like in the town that I wrote about, Sebastia, which is known as Samaria to the settlers, like 6,000 years ago, the Canaanites were there. The Canaanites were toppled by just one civilization after another. Alexander the Great destroyed it, rebuilt it. And at some point, the Israelites were definitely there. They named it their capital, Samaria. And that is the small sliver of history that the settlers will have us believe is, should be privileged above all the others.
Okay. So with that said, let's just one other thing I want to set up for, the importance of what's going on there now, because it really feels like, I want to say the Netanyahu government, but really it's a large swath of Israeli society has been preparing for an opportunity like the one that Donald Trump is going to present to Israel in terms of like annexing the West Bank. But I mean, this is there has to be a lot of people, and this was, most of your reporting was obviously prior to the election, but there had to have been a lot of people who were basically, Donald Trump must have represented to them a huge opportunity.
And I think, sorry to interject, there was polling done about this. Kamala Harris was I think Trump tripled her support among the Israeli population.
Yeah. I mean, Trump, as you guys have covered, allegedly made a deal with Miriam Adelson to take $100 million of cash for the campaign in exchange for supporting the annexation of Israel. I should just say she denies that. But then he chooses Mike Huckabee to be the ambassador, who is an evangelical who only refers to it as Judea and Samaria. So there's no secret among certainly the far right in Israel, and as you say, a lot of mainstream Israel and the settlers, of course, that Trump is, I don't want to say ideologically aligned with them, because who knows what Trump's ideology on all this is, but he can be manipulated into supporting the annexation. Now, I will just say, if you ask most Palestinians, they will tell you that in the West Bank, or I should say the ones I spoke to at least, they will say, makes no difference, Trump, Biden, Kamala, Smotrich is going to do what Smotrich wants to do. And I think there is truth to that. But, what I get into in the story is how this idea of West Bank annexation is not going to look like one day, the entire IDF just rolls into the West Bank and starts planting flags everywhere. It's actually sort of a technocratic, quiet process that has been unfolding and is now expediting, and in particular through antiquities law. And one day we're just going to wake up and it's going to be like, oh, Israel now effectively controls the entire West Bank.
Well, this has been the Israeli strategy, as far as I can remember, the concept of facts on the ground. And this feels like a building upon the facts on the ground, where we're going to take new immigrants, and I think in particular Russian immigrants, and we're going to settle them essentially in these occupied territories and have them build essentially facts on the ground, which are going to be much harder to unravel. Give us a sense of what was happening within the context of archaeology. Well, why is archaeology, broadly speaking, in this, so important to this project of essentially annexation?
Well, I mean, it's so important to the project of Zionism, frankly. Annexation is, the extension of it. But I mean, it goes all the way back actually to before the Zionists even arrived in, at the time it was mandatory Palestine. The British, when they started coming into Ottoman Palestine in the 19th century, were doing land surveying and renaming landmarks and, finding things. And basically they were finding biblical stories in the ground. And they sort of set this epistemological framework to begin to think of Palestine in these real biblical terms. So then when the Zionists actually do start,
that's when history started, right? When the Bible was made.
Exactly. That's when history started.
Okay.
And look, I mean, you could just deconstruct archaeology as a discipline and see how the entire thing is actually just sort of interpretation on interpretation. But, there is some science to it. But so basically when the early Zionists start to show up at around the turn of the century, the late 1800s, early 19th century, very quickly they pick up where the British left off. They start digging through the dirt, finding pieces of pottery, saying, oh, well, this is clearly from King Omri, so this must be so-and-so. And basically what happens between let's say the late 1800s and 1948, when Israel is actually founded, is archaeology starts to develop as a discipline in what would become Israel, where it sort of was turning the Bible into a definitive history book. And so it was treating archaeology as this hard science, which it's not. And, certainly the way they're using it is not. They were treating it as a hard science to basically create the idea by 1948 that, as you say, we have the facts on the ground. This is, in fact, Israel. So then when Israel actually is founded in 1948, Ben-Gurion was a huge fan of archaeology. He immediately sets people out to lead digs all across the country, and it becomes sort of like a national hobby where it's taught in schools, it's in museums. I mean, the way that we think of archaeology in this country is sort of this practice that some people do. It just was not like that there. This was again, sort of fundamental to building the identity of the Israeli Jew, was finding things in the ground, saying where in the Old Testament it was from, and calling it Israel. Now, when you get to 1967, you already have this discipline that has been used to basically create a Jewish identity in the ground. I should say, like, the archaeologists at the time, who knows exactly what their politics were, but I think it's fair to say that at least a lot of them were not like explicitly saying like, we need to go take as much land as we possibly can. But what they did was they had turned this discipline into a tool for finding, for calling the land Jewish. So, 1967 war happens. They occupy the West Bank. And immediately, archaeologists start pouring over the border, breaking international law, I should say, and doing digs and doing the exact same thing. And so I think what's interesting is, like, today we have, the far right, the Netanyahus and the Smotriches, who have just completely vulgarized archaeology and turned it into just a blunt force weapon. But there also were just these ostensibly non-political actors who just were like, well, this is what we do. We dig in the ground. We call the ground Jewish. Now we control the West Bank, so we're going to go do it over there.
Fascinating. And I mean, it's almost as if like they're coming in and they're building the infrastructure by digging underneath there. Because I mean, you could dig deeper. I mean, like literally, right? And it's one thing to say that it's scientific in the sense that, like, oh, with carbon dating or having carbon dated other artifacts or other ways of assessing the age of these things, we know it's from this era, or we know that in this era they used this materials to build this type of thing at this point. So you can largely you can place it in time, but you don't really know like who else was there or who. Some of it you can tell who it was made by, but you can't, a bowl is a bowl is a bowl more often than not.
Yeah, a bowl is a bowl is a bowl, unless you are in Israel or Palestine. But I mean, I think that, like, even if you ask, let's say take a Palestinian who lives in Sebastia, who is like very in touch with the ruins in this place. Sebastia is the Palestinian village that is, on what the settlers know as Samaria. Most of them will not say, oh no, there were never any Israelites here. Like, there's no evidence of Jewish history. Most of them will say, yeah, there were at least 10 major civilizations here. We have evidence of virtually all of them. And we don't think that a single one of them just suddenly like gets to, say, well, because of this, we get to live here. So there's like, even if we do stipulate that some of the archaeological findings that prove that this is, Israelite territory, even if we stipulate they're true, first of all, there's, as you say, there's lots of other findings. And I should say that, like, some of these archaeologists are known to just bulldoze through what they sort of think of as like the debris of, non-Jewish civilizations to get down to the Jewish stuff, which they then, treat as the actual finding. But even if you go as far as to say, and I don't know how you would do this, but even if you were to say, actually, yes, this was the kingdom of Israel for more time than it was anything else, like, that still doesn't mean that, thousands of years later, the people who say they're descendants of that, of whom I think both you and I, Sam, would be among them, we don't get to just say, well, we now get to live here. Because if you follow that logic, I mean, the entire world order falls apart.
Well, I mean, the Canaanites, apparently, from a genetic standpoint, probably more Lebanese right now. And that would open up a whole can of worms if we had, Canaanite descendants come into Israel and say, incidentally, this is probably my ancestral home.
Yeah. I haven't been able to fact check this yet, but apparently even in America, there are some people that say they were here before us that could, like, allegedly come and say, this is ours now. And so you just, like, it is, of course, like, this is what Israel is built on, is this idea that they have reclaimed their ancient homeland. Archaeology is the tool by which they try to, like, prove that, but it does not withstand a whole lot of scrutiny, because very quickly you see, if you go by this, then there are no countries anymore. Like, everything just falls apart.
And it's a threat. The fact that these cultural touchstones that may not fit a specific narrative would exist. It's the same reason why they have obliterated and bombed every basically university in Gaza, right?
Yeah.
And it's the fact that that Israelis were not so emboldened at the time that they did at the very least maintain some of the archival material that was able to be unsealed and used by these Israeli new historians like Ilan Pape, among others. That is such a gift that is not going to be afforded, it seems to me, to historians with any material that's found in the coming years.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up Gaza, because I think something that is important for people to understand is that, biblically speaking, Gaza is not super significant to the Jews. I mean, it is technically in the Bible. It's where the Philistines were from. The Philistines were famously the enemies of the Jews. So like the sort of messianics, the messianic people in Israel don't necessarily feel that same like drive that they need to take it over. In the case of Gaza, I think, and probably the Golan Heights to a certain extent too, it's more about just like, let's get all these people out of here and just take over all this land. Whereas in the West Bank, again, like this is the heart of the kingdom of Israel. And so the Gaza thing you just mentioned, Emma, I think is sort of perfect example or perfect incident that brings this to light. I don't know if you recall, but in like the weeks after October 7th, there was this Israeli minister who went on the radio and basically suggested dropping a nuclear bomb on Gaza. And it was like so outrageous that I think even Netanyahu might have been like, okay, take it easy, buddy. The guy who said that, most people don't know, was Israel's heritage minister. This is the guy who is literally in charge of the archaeological sites across Israel. And he's also the guy who is sort of leading the charge to annex the West Bank by way of archaeology, who had no problem just, obliterating every single piece of ancient history in Gaza.
Right. There's archaeology, and then there's archaeology, I guess, for this guy. And so since October 7th, in particular, and I imagine this would have happened regardless, but maybe the pace has picked up. The use of the, I guess, civil code, essentially, that governs archaeology has been fully, I think prior to that, it was already weaponized. But this is like sort of like weaponized and then supercharged. Like, tell us how that's working now, or at least, when you were over there earlier in the year.
Yeah, and as you say, I think this stuff was on the docket. It's just like they're taking the opportunity now. So just first on like the sort of basic like rhetorical level, the IDF and the settlers in the West Bank are now much more comfortable just rolling into Palestinian villages, accusing them of destroying Jewish history, of course, accusing them of being terrorists, and just like destroying things. Like a perfect example of this is actually in this town of Sebastia, there was this streetlight system that was built. It was like, I want to say 12 new streetlights built on a dark street. Right after they finished them, the IDF came in with bulldozers and just demolished them. And when I reached out to the IDF, in demolishing them, they destroyed ancient ruins. They completely knocked over to these ancient
The
Roman
Israelis
columns.
did. Let's just be clear.
Yes, the IDF did. So I reached out to the IDF about this, and I saw this with my own two eyes. I reached out to them and I said, do you have a comment on destroying these streetlights, which knocked down these ancient Roman columns? And what they said was, the exact wording is in the article Drift, but more or less what they said was, the streetlights were built illegally on an archaeological site, and something to the effect of like destroying heritage. I asked them, okay, but what about the fact that you're the ones that actually knocked down the ruins? And of course, they had no comment on that part. So that's sort of the first level of it. Is like they're just sort of emboldened to come in and just destroy things and start shooting. And say they're protecting Jewish history, but the legislative stuff is pretty serious, and it's just not being talked about at all. So there's two main policy initiatives that I think I hope people pay attention to. So the first one is what's called a cabinet decision that Smotrich put forward, which basically gives the Israeli civil administration, which is like the sort of pseudo government that Israel set up in the West Bank to manage the West Bank in partnership with the Palestinian Authority. And it's sort of meant to create a firewall between Israel and the West Bank. And so they use this to sort of claim that Israel's not actually occupying the West Bank in a way. So this first cabinet decision gives the Israeli civil administration the right to manage heritage sites, not just in Area C, where they had been able to do it before, which is from the Oslo Accords, Israeli-controlled territory, but now in Area B as well. And so what this means is in the town of Sebastia, which is...
Area B was ostensibly areas that were not controlled by the Israelis.
Correct. It was joint security control and administrative controls with the Palestinians. And so what this means in Sebastia, where the Oslo Accord line literally just zigzags through town, it means that what had been, or what is Area B, which the town is allowed to build in, they're allowed to do basically whatever they want in. Now, if it's near an archaeological site, which the entire town is, the Israeli civil administration can say, you can't touch it. So what that means is that the people in Sebastia, the municipality has lost the ability to do any sort of work in their town. And it goes further. I mean, the mayor has been arrested and intimidated. The deputy head of archaeology for the Israeli civil administration threatened him over it. So that's the first thing, is sort of giving the ICA more control of archaeological sites and the areas surrounding archaeological sites in the West Bank, which I should mention, pretty much all of the West Bank is around an archaeological site.
Let me just say, the analogy to me is I don't know if it's those slap laws or trap laws, the ones that are set up prior to Roe v. Wade being knocked down. You'd have states like Texas who would say well, you can only get licensed to provide abortions if you have a 30-foot ceiling, and you need to have 7 egresses from the facility, and there needs to be a full-on CAT scan machine on premises, just as a way of basically making it impossible. This is what they seem to be doing here, is that they're not changing the laws head on, but they're doing these sort of side it's bank shot stuff.
Exactly. And nobody, the news is not reporting on bank shots. You're not getting a New York Times story on wow, the Israeli civil administration can now manage archaeological sites in Area B in addition to Area C, because it is disguised as this sort of narrow antiquities law. The second bill, which is actually matriculating through the Knesset right now, is scarier. So this is one that basically would take management authority over West Bank archaeological sites away from the Israeli civil administration and give it to the Israeli Antiquities Authority, which manages archaeological sites inside of Israel. So I know this sounds like this sort of weird bureaucratic, okay, who cares? But what this actually means is that that government that was set up ostensibly to manage the West Bank, separate from Israel, separate from the IDF, in partnership with the Palestinian Authority, they are now saying, no, actually, you guys don't manage it anymore. Now it's just managed by the Israeli government. And so it is part of this process, which is a huge, both rhetorical and legislative couple of steps to erase what is called the green line, the line between Israel and its occupied territories. If there's no difference between who manages Israel and who manages the West Bank, like I was saying before, at a certain point, it's you have officially now annexed the West Bank. Israel controls it. And so when you take these two laws together, the first one is about sort of strengthening Israeli control from inside the West Bank, softening Palestinian ability to control it. And then the second one is now we're just going to swallow it whole. Now that we've softened Palestinian control in there, we're just going to take over the whole thing. And all of it, again, is disguised as archaeological law.
I was just on the Nation cruise and did a panel with Jeet here on the question of Israel and Palestine. And he made a great point that I've never heard really sort of articulate this. Maybe I'm just late to the party, but I said, we were talking about the debate as to whether one state, two state. He says it's already a one state.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing.
One state reality.
As they start to say, oh, there's no need for a separate agency to administer these things in the West Bank. and it just becomes one agency that administers stuff, whether it's in, Tel Aviv or, West Jerusalem and in throughout the West Bank. It's effectively one society under one structure, and it just so happens that we have, these are our ghettos, as it were, and this is what we've created. I mean, that's what's happening on a de facto basis.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you should immediately stop taking anybody seriously who starts talking about a two-state solution as if it is in any way like viable. I mean, it's not to say like, oh, well, there's an obvious, one-state solution there either, but like the two-state solution is not the serious argument. Sorry, go on. What were you going to ask?
Well, one of the other things, I mean, just broadly, I mean, I think that's the sort of the biggest turn in where they are aggressively already setting up an infrastructure that is seamless to annex the West Bank and exert full control over, presumably all territory there. But what I also appreciated your piece, because it outlines all of what we're talking about, but the amount of sort of, I don't know, the amount, it's almost like the banalization of violence against just about everybody you came across, where people are like, oh, this guy, come sit, have a coffee with us. No, he can't sit because he's been shot in the ass.
17.
Like everybody's been shot in one fashion or another. It's stunning.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. So like the degree to which the violence is just ubiquitous, it's sort of stunning. And this is what I've been going on about for a year now. But in the town of Sebastia, just to like explain what you're describing here. So I just want to like lay out a series of events that all happened within a couple of hours. So I was this is like a quiet, sleepy town. There's no armed resistance in this town. The resistance, as they say, is that like every time Israel comes and knocks something over, they're going to rebuild it. If they come and steal a flag, they're going to put the flag back up. So anyway, the soldiers came into town one day when I was there. It was me and 3 locals minding our business. And they just charged out of their Jeeps, pointed their guns at us, cocked their weapons, started screaming, and basically then just took off and drove to the top of a hill and stole a flag and left. Right after that happened, I had a meeting set up with somebody who had been shot. So I was talking to this 17-year-old kid who had been shot. As I'm talking to him, what you just alluded to, Sam, his friend just walks by pure coincidence, and I offered him a seat, and my translator says, oh, he can't sit. They shot him in the ass, actually. Right after that, I meet 2 more people who are shot. And then later that evening, the next day, soldiers then actually came back into town and did shoot somebody. And again, like everything that I just said, there is not a single story in the international press about any of this. This is most people
or the Israeli press, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like it is for good reason, we are all paying attention to what's happening in Gaza because it is a literal genocide. The carnage is just so conspicuous in our face every day. But there's also this thing happening in the West Bank where like the ease with which they will just shoot a teenager in the legs. I mean, it's unbelievable. It happened while I was there. It's a town of 4,000 people. And while I was there, they just shot somebody in the leg. He might never walk again. It is just like, they of course suffer no consequences whatsoever. I also reported on a kid who was murdered in 2023. The family of the boy who was murdered, the kid was just driving in his car. He was driving to his dad's factory, and soldiers just ambushed him, just put 50 bullets into him. The family literally never even heard from the IDF. They never heard from the Israeli government. So, I mean, I remember last time I was here, we talked about sort of the lack of accountability, how like the legal system is just not, holding settlers and soldiers accountable. But in this case, we're talking about somebody who was shot 50 times. And somebody within the IDF admitted to me that it was a mistake, and nobody even bothered to call the family about it. So like, yes, the banalization of the violence, the way it is just everywhere. I mean, it's pretty staggering.
Well, it's an important piece. We will link to it. It's published in the Drift magazine, In Ruins, Archaeological Warfare in the West Bank. Jasper Nathaniel, always a pleasure. And we'll put a link also to your Infinite Jaz newsletter on Substack.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot, Sam and Emma.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jasper.
Thank you. All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program, wherein we'll try and have some fun.
That is the one, I think, opportunity, if we're talking about cracks in this upcoming Trump administration, for us to exploit. If West Bank annexation occurs, which Trump just said the other day he's not in favor of it, but that doesn't mean anything. As Jasper was saying, they're just going to formalize it and do it more slowly. That creates an opportunity for us to finally have some Democratic politicians who talk about a one-state reality and not, basically Bantustans for Palestinians. That's like what the vision is of two states. And so, that's where we need to get. Besides Rashida Tlaib, Bernie Sanders won't say genocide. We have a few members of the House that will say it, but that can't be the bar anymore. This has to be a future where we talk about anti-apartheid one state living amongst one another side by side reality. And that's always what the fight has been. But for too long, our Democratic politicians just hear from J Street and they get copy paste their talking points. There's liberal Zionism isn't a thing. It's not a real thing. So maybe we can get some Democrats to start to actually deal with the reality of Israel-Palestine, but the genocide could be complete by then. So it's just something to look out for.
Yeah, I have to say, just, again, I mentioned this during the interview, but conceptually speaking, Israel is a one state. One state reality. As it is right now. Yep. It is a one state. It just so happens that it controls millions of people's lives. They're coming and going. You can't leave. You don't have control of your own borders. You don't have a passport. It just so happens that within this one state, there is a significant percentage of people who are not just second-class citizens, third or fourth or fifth-class citizens. I mean, almost not even, you wouldn't even necessarily call them citizens, but I mean, that's, 2/3 less. And that is the reality of what's going on there.
Yep. And the sooner we realize it, the better, basically. And so perhaps if Donald Trump does that, that's the education that we can have. But we've been saying this since the beginning, I think, a lot on this show.
He gave me the Golan Heights. I didn't even ask for it. And he gave me the Golan Heights.
I mean, the two states
always keeps his promises and more. Very good at managing.
People were saying this about the two-state thing in 2014.
Yeah.
But it exists like liberal Zionism as a fiction for the discourse to waste time with.
Time is what Israel
they're working
needs.
tirelessly on that two-state solution.
I've heard that.
And a ceasefire too.
Through the night. That's why everybody's so tired.
Did you see that giant bomb that Israel sent to Syria? Looked like a
Greater Israel.
A star crashing into the earth.
Israel is creating a buffer zone to protect their buffer zone.
Yes, we were saying that buffer zone's got to go all the way to Iran, don't you? I mean, all right, we don't need to go down this road, but war with Iran more likely in the next 4 years than I think people would like to actually consider.
My understanding is that as descendants of Canaanites, they have claim to the land.
Oh, that's true. I know.
You need a buffer zone around the area that the Bible gives you too. So you gotta maybe just expand into
the Bible buffer. Duh.
We're gonna take a break. Head into the fun half. We'll talk about Donald Trump. Contemplating privatizing the post office, which may be the more than any other institution in our government, the one that actually first created the United States, right? Like, I mean, just like the ability to send messages, Pony Express, one thing that gives social cohesion. To privatize this would be just awful.
The press was able to get, what was it, free carriage through the postal office because we knew that we wanted to inform the public. Royal Mail in the UK also looking at privatization. And my favorite writer, Thomas Pynchon, his first novel, Crying of Lot 49, or first big novel, there's a subplot in there about a libertarian aristocratic conspiracy to have a private postal service. Actually, it's kind of the main thing about it. So.
Folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, you also get the fun half, and you can IM us. And you really basically keep this show keeping on. Today we had 3 ads in our ad break. We, as a rule, don't do that. Will not do that in future. There was a scheduling issue, but our ability to support the program without having to, go crazy with ads is a function of our members. So if you can support the program, we hope you will. Join themajorityreport.com. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee. Hot chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Makes a great, probably at this point, late Christmas gift. But you know what? Why stop giving gifts?
Yeah.
Because it's not December 25th. I mean, first off,
Hanukkah starts on Christmas, right?
Starts on Christmas. So you got an extra 8 days. But even then, you don't have to wait till Valentine's Day to give somebody a pound of coffee. Have it exist throughout the year. That's what I say. Justcoffee.coop.
ESPN yesterday, Bradley and I.
Oh, and get the M majority hat.
Shout out majority.
Merchandise.
And, will you be a little bit...
Majority report. Right.
But, okay, talk about the hat, unenthusiastic, then talk about the 20th anniversary mugs.
We're back on the anniversary mugs. I don't know if we'll order any after this. This will probably be the last order of them that we do.
Hear that, hype beasts?
That's the, I didn't mean to go really crazy. But that logo was the first logo, that Majority Report Radio was the first logo that we launched, the movable type blog 20 years ago.
Throwback.
Yep.
I like that one.
Yeah, I did too. I think I made that.
That logo yourself?
I think I made it.
And
or maybe my sister did. I can't remember.
This is the one that you hate, the limited edition and Majority Report baseball hat. Shop.majorityreportradio.com. Get it while it's hot, folks.
I like that color. I like that gray color.
Limited edition until the end of 2024. And then on ESPN yesterday, we recapped last week in the NFL, why Josh Allen is it's long overdue. Time for an MVP. I talked about my favorite quarterback in the upcoming draft because the Giants will be in the market. We talked about Travis Hunter winning the Heisman and more. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
Matt.
Also, leftreckoning.com/store where you can get hats like this and some cool t-shirts. Tonight, Matthew Sitman joins us on Left Reckoning on YouTube at 7 o'clock Eastern.
From Know Your Enemy, that guy, right?
From Know Your Enemy, indeed. We're talking about Trump's faux populism and also the Bill Clinton problem. So check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
Also, we have filled out our best of shows for the coming week or so. But if you have best of clips, like funny clips or important clips,
YouTube videos,
send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Write the words best of in the subject line. And we will add those to the shows over the next week. Also, just FYI, from Gold Rush John, January 7th is Eastern Orthodox Christmas, and apparently Ukrainian Americans love coffee. So there you go.
Are those thoughts connected?
I'm just reading it from this guy. I don't know.
All right.
Maybe just more a large Eastern Orthodox population of Ukrainians.
Okay, gotcha.
Fun half. left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457-238-56-27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.